AI tools in higher education classrooms to enhance student engagement and improve learning outcomes with a focus on incorporating generative AI into the classroom as an AI tutor providing personalized and adaptive support and guidance to students. The session presenters are Maggie Gilchrist and Eric Brinkman, both instructional technology consultants at Indiana University. The stage is yours.
Thank you, James. Welcome, everyone. We're really glad that you could join us today. As James said, I'm Maggie. I use she, her pronouns, and this is my colleague, Eric.
Hi, Eric. They, them pronouns, and then that's our email up there.
So we have a few goals for today's presentation. We want to talk about, consider the use of several Gen AI tools, explore some practical strategies for incorporating these tools into your classroom, and more specifically, we're really going to target how to use AI as a tutor for your students, as well as touch on a few generative AI policies and best practices.
So in case anybody isn't familiar, just some tiny bit of background here just for a hot second. We'll mostly talk about chatbots today, but I do want to put it into the discussion that there are that generative AI generates things, and some of the things it generates are images, video, audio. If you're like creeped out by some of the things the chatbots say, play around with the audio, which is really good at like imitating other people's voices. And what's her name? The goo lady, the actress in Iron Man. What's her name? She already sold her voice to an AI company. So if you want her to read anything in her voice, you can just go to that AI company and pay for it. Anyway, also lots of chatbots. We'll touch on a couple here real quick again, because I think it's important to recognize that they don't all respond in exactly the same way. They are all dependent on large language models. That means basically we're talking about big data. So as they continue to increase the size of the data sets, then theoretically they get better. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. I heard a really good analogy a little while last week. A student actually shared an analogy with me that we can think of generative AI as kind of like a chef, and that what an AI does is sort of rearrange. Technically it's tokens, but if you think of it as ingredients, what an AI does is rearrange ingredients and then try to give you what it thinks you're asking for. That in a lot of ways, essentially, that's a metaphor for what AI does. As such, it has advantages and disadvantages, which we'll talk about a little bit. And then again, it comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. So I just throw these up to sort of, again, point out that so I'm going to talk about, we're going to talk about some ways you can use AI and how you might design an escape room as a sort of using AI. It can both use AI and be designed by AI, at least partially. So you might want to try some different ones. And from here on, we'll mostly focus on ChatGPT, but there are other ones. Claude just got a big update. For example, here at IU, we have the enterprise staff and faculty have access to the enterprise version of Copilot, which means it's not supposed to hoard your data. It's not supposed to be adding your data. Yeah, who knows if we believe that or not, but it's not supposed to be adding our data to its LLM. Perplexity I threw in as an example of basically new AIs are popping up almost, on a, it seems like every few weeks a new AI pops up. They all have different capacities, different things they're good at, different uses. So Perplexity is one that's supposed to be pulling from, for its large length, for its data set, it's largely pulling from academic work. So it's theoretically going to give you fewer hallucinations. And then the other thing that I did want to, again, put into the discussion, because I haven't heard it talked about yet today, is that there are differences between these. So ChatGPT, the one that kicked it off, the free version is 3.5. The paid version is version 4. So as we think about designing assignments for students and what kind of AI use we may or may not recommend, keep in mind that it's not entirely equitable. Some students may have access to different versions of these programs.
Okay, so AI at its best, which is what we're hoping to focus on today, though we will touch on some of the things to be wary of towards the end. But ideally, AI can be used to collaborate with both students and instructors in a way that is helpful to long-term learning, but also offloads some of those tasks that are repetitive. So for instance, professors can use it to generate course content like sample essays or case studies for analysis for their class that would otherwise be very time consuming to create. It can also help students with their skills practice for a course. So they can turn to AI to make sure that they understand complex terms or to develop their own research questions. So here are just a few things that AI can be used for. Some of these I've already touched on, but I also want to highlight these two at the bottom specifically. So one is to elicit different perspectives. So this means that oftentimes when students write a paper, they write it and then they're done and they don't think about the topic. If you have them engage with AI, then they can ask the AI for different perspectives, different viewpoints. They can ask the AI to challenge them by offering follow-up questions that can help them think through things more deeply than they might if they just wrote one version of something and turned it in. Our main focus today, as we've said, is going to be on using AI as a personal tutor for students. So we know research has shown for years and years that the more feedback students get, the more individual and personalized help that they receive, the better they do in their courses. But this is not accessible to a lot of students, either from financial barriers, cost barriers, or even disabilities, extreme anxiety that might prevent them from seeking that one-on-one help that would otherwise be really valuable to them. And so what we're proposing today is to use AI not as a replacement by any means for in-class discussion or for your office hours or anything like that, but instead as a supplementary tool, as an extra that students can use to help them in your course. The first thing we're going to talk about is how you can use prompts with AI to get a tutor from two vantage points. So one of them is we're going to call it student prompted and the other is instructor prompted. And what we mean by that is basically who is initiating the conversation with these tools. So in this example where I had AI tutor me in quantum mechanics, this is a student prompted sample. And so in this case, this would be if you were to talk about with your class how students could use AI to tutor them, and they are just sort of left to their own devices to go to the AI tools and to get that conversation started. So if you notice here, I said I'm taking advanced physics and we're discussing the concept of quantum mechanics. My professor has explained it several different ways. I can tell they want to help me, but I just don't get it. I'm too embarrassed to keep asking them. Can you give me 3 different definitions with examples? Please make sure that at least one of these definitions and examples is worded in a way an 8-year-old would understand, which by the way is yes, the only way that I would ever understand quantum mechanics. And as you can see here, ChatGPT immediately picked up on a few things. Not only the fact that it, like the kind of basics of what was expected, where it knew that it needed to give me examples and break it down, but it also sort of picked up on that emotional level where I said, I'm embarrassed, I'm nervous. And so it automatically comes back with these sort of like validations, like a student might see if they were to go to a tutoring center. Quantum mechanics can be tricky to grasp at first, this sort of like really encouraging language. We're going to do a deep dive sample where you see a much longer conversation in a moment. For now, I'm just wanting you to get a sense of how you can prompt them. So this one is instructor prompted. You might use these if you are designing an assignment and you want your students to use AI as a supplemental tool, but you are hoping to get that conversation started sort of for them or give them some guidance on what that conversation might look like. And so in this style of prompt, you would make sure that the AI knows that who it is in this. So here you can see I said, you are a tutor for an undergraduate student taking a business course. I'm not going to read you this full prompt, though I will walk you through a few key points. One, I tell them a bit about the audience, the population. So for instance, if you had a class with non-majors, then you could tell it that. I defined the goal. The goal is to find out details about the assignment and help the student formulate. I encourage it to be friendly, but also to keep two important things in mind. One, not to do the assignment, but instead to ask questions. And as you can see in this initial response that we get back from ChatGPT, it already addresses some of those concerns and immediately jumps into asking questions that will help that student think critically. So rather than using the tool as a crutch, they're instead using it as a way to generate really productive questions. Okay. When you are engineering these prompts, there are a few things to keep in mind that I hope you maybe have started picking up on just from the 2 sample prompts that we looked at. One is to be as detailed as possible. So we're all in a place where we have been kind of trained for years and years to be as concise as we can. We go to Google and we want to use as few words as possible, be really specific and short, and get the best results that way. And we're having to kind of unlearn that. So you can give multi-paragraph level prompts, be as detailed as you possibly can, and to be explicit as you possibly can. And that means incorporating things that it should do that you want to see, and also things that you don't want it to include. The best thing to do is to consider the rhetorical situation. So regardless of whether you are hoping for a more student prompted outcome or for the AI to take the lead as the tutor, you want to make sure that that the AI understands who the author is, who the audience is, and what the message and purpose is that you're wanting to get out of the outcome. And then last but arguably most important, be willing to revise, because the chances of getting a perfect result right away in that first one is not likely, right? So keep playing with it. Say things like, no, not like this, do this instead, or take this out, or add these elements, anything that kind of keeps messing with it until you get better and better results. And now I'm going to turn it over to Eric so that they can walk us through a more specific example in detail.
Thanks, Maggie. Yeah, so what we will do with the sort of maybe some of the balance of the time, there's a few more things we want to talk about, but then this is the sort of meat and potatoes of the thing, is we'll try to walk you through a little bit an example of so what I'm calling an instructor prompted student-centered AI tutor. So again, the idea is, if you think of it maybe as like a spectrum, so at one end of the spectrum, the student's doing all of the sort of prompting work. This is maybe a little bit more where the instructor is trying to design a prompt such that maybe then a student that doesn't have as much experience working with prompts could still be successful or could still get some benefit. But I think, right now there is, Kamingo, if you're following any of the other stuff, like everybody's trying to develop these kinds of tutors. If somebody does, then we'll have to reevaluate all these things. But in the meantime, there is no sort of like perfect solution to this right now. It's always going to be a sort of interplay between the instructor, the students, and the generative AI. But in this example, what we're trying to do is build one that basically I could either make into a GPT to release to students or give as a prompt to students, so that with a minimum of input on their minimum of training with them on their end, that they could still use it and be successful. So what I designed is an escape room that uses, I liked some of the previous sessions we've already heard today. We were talking about it a little bit before this one started, that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're going to use the teaching and learning principles that we know are already true and try to use them and make them work for us through a generative AI, like their input or alongside. So active teaching, we know that's a thing. We know it works. There's a lot of research behind it. So let's design an active teaching exercise that incorporates generative AI and helps us maybe be a little bit more productive, or helps us learn things in maybe newer or innovative ways. So can I use a generative AI chatbot to help me design an escape room? And then I'll just be honest, as an instructor, this is a kind of like, again, escape rooms aren't new. Escape rooms have been around for quite a while. Instructors have pedagogically been using escape rooms for a while. There's there's a growing body of research that supports the use of escape rooms in the classroom. I never did it because I didn't feel like I had the time. to develop this kind of thing. So instead, I sat down with ChatGPT. I think I used, I can't totally remember, but I'm pretty sure I used Copilot and maybe Bing as well, back when it was called Bing instead of Gemini, but I think it was Bing. I put some prompts into those generative AIs and said, help me design an escape room. Like, what would an escape room look like if I wanted to use it in the classroom to learn this thing I'm getting ready to talk about? So it's a productivity. As for me as the instructor, it helped me get started on something, instead of like, if I had said, I'm going to design an escape room in a vacuum with no feedback or starting place, honestly, again, I never did it. So with AI as a tool that could give me some feedback and help me get started, I was able to do this. So then the goals to both use to talk about how AI helped me design it, and then also how AI is incorporated into the actual activity that the AI helped me design. So it's very metacognitive on some level. And then I have a blog. Let's see if this works. So for people, we're all learning this new platform here today, I think, a lot of us. So if you click that live stage button, it opens up a little panel on the right side, and then you get a chat. And if I put this in here, yeah, there's the link to my blog. So I'd have an ongoing blog talking about my adventures in generative AI. So here's the goal of the escape room, a couple different purposes. Basically, as an instructor, I was teaching a class on criticizing television. It was a second level writing course. There was also a GE credit for race and ethnicity at Ohio State. So this is what I want my escape room to do. I wanted to familiarize them with William Perry's 4 stages of intellectual development. That's the sort of contextual goal or content related goal. Then I also, in terms of generative AI, I want it to give the students a chance to use generative AI in the classroom. Because if people have read the Stanford, I should have that link too. If people have read the Stanford research that says that students aren't cheating more, but largely because they were already cheating, the answer to the sort of research-based answer to cheating with AI is to make sure you're explaining to students how you want them to use AI. So the example I always use is, I'm an international student. I don't feel really confident about my English, my English grammar and spelling, and so I've been using Grammarly to help correct some of my check my spelling and grammar for me. Somebody tells me ChatGPT will do the same thing for me for free. I go and I put my essay through ChatGPT. It appears to fix my grammar and spelling. I go, wonderful. I turn it into my instructor, and my instructor accuses me of academic misconduct. Right? Whose fault is that in that scenario? I'm going to say that's a little bit more on the instructor side, right? So we have to be clear with students about how we want them to use AI, and the best way to do that is to use some class time and demonstrate for them how you would like them to use AI. So one of the goals of this escape room is to get them using AI in the classroom where I can watch them and have conversations with them about their AI use, and then we can be sure we're on the same page. Again, transparency, we knew it worked. We know it helps first generation students, especially. Let's use it. And then the last thing is, again, sort of, oh no, that is what I just talked about. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, so if you're not super familiar, real quick, I'm going to do this as quickly as I possibly can. William Perry's 4 stages of intellectual development. What I need students to do for me to feel successful teaching a course on second level writing is I want students to be able to take a lens. Again, I was teaching race and gender, so maybe that's feminism, maybe that's critical race theory. I need them to take a lens, apply it to an object. In my case, it was television. I need them to pick a lens, apply it to an object, and develop an argument, and then write an 8 to 10 page paper about it. So that's what I need them to do. What I found was, again, in the interest of transparency, the best way for me to be able to do that is to explain them these levels. If I can explain them the difference between these levels, then they really quickly catch up to why they need a lens, why a lens is important to their writing, and how to incorporate the lens into their longer writing. So the 4 stages are basically dualism. Students often come to us. They want to know what the right answer is. We need to, in the humanities at least, we need them to understand that, like, often there are multiple answers to the same question. So then they get to multiplicity. Usually what happens when you get a student in this stage is, and they're like, well, if there's more than one answer, all answers are the same, right? I can give any answer. It doesn't matter. Everything's subjective. That doesn't work. So then we wanted to show them for disciplinary reasons, maybe there are better choices about what perspectives to take, what disciplines, what lenses to use. When you get them there, then they'll basically follow the procedure. So I use some, I know some instructors don't like them. I use basically a version of the instant thesis generator. I found it really helpful for students to help them to get up to speed. They'll start to follow the instant thesis generator, which again, mine is lens applied to object plus argument. And then finally, commitment is they start to see the value behind taking a particularly disciplinary view. They start to believe maybe in the discipline, understand why a discipline has the values that it has, and then they can make a commitment to that discipline and a commitment to use that lens and perspective because they know what kinds of results that they'll get. I hope that makes sense. If not, we'll try to please chat away. And we'll check there. We'll have some time for questions here at the end. So what I want my escape room to do, again, generative AI, ChatGPT mostly here, I think, help me design these virtual escape rooms. So what I would do is I would come to class with a box. It has a bunch of instructions in the box. I give each group of 3 to 5 students a box. They take it out, they read the directions, they try to accomplish the goal of the escape room. And when they finish it, they get the next box, move on to the next escape room. We lost our moderator. I hope that's okay. I hope that doesn't mean anything bad. So basically what the ChatGPT helped me do was, oh no, I got a red button that says stop presenting. Does that mean we're supposed to stop? Or do we keep going? Keep going. Dualism means, again, sort of right and wrong answers. So what I do is I give them a set of cards and I say, sort these into piles of correct and incorrect. And then the point is a couple of the questions on the cards won't be easy to put into one of those 2 piles. Like it may be some shades of gray, or there could be an answer that's like partly right, partly wrong. So then they have to struggle with, there we go. They have to struggle with sorting those cards. And then what I'm going to do is encourage them to ask a generative AI program to help them sort the cards. So when they hit a card that's maybe a little bit on a gray area, they're allowed to ask the generative AI questions, like which pile would you sort this into and why? What kinds of reasons do you think would suggest putting it in one pile or the other? And then they interact with the AI, right? Have a conversation as a group and then make a decision about which pile they want to put the card in, right? So they're not just letting AI give them the answer. It's part of a conversation that they're having in collaboration with each other to make a decision about what they want to do. Then they bring the cards up, hand them in. In my mind, I haven't done this yet, but in my mind, I want to make like a little Mission Impossible sounding thing that like I play on a recorder, and then like their next mission, then I hand them the next box. Anyway, that's a goofy idea I have. So the idea is to go through, again, you can sort of, let's see, I think I did. Did I remember? Yeah, okay. So here, if folks are interested, I will add a link again, live stage, chat, here's a link. Here's a write-up that you should be able to get to, shared on OneDrive, that describes all 4 chat rooms and how the plan to use them in the classroom. And then what we'll focus on for a couple more minutes is the last one. So let me link in there too. So basically what I did to design the last escape room box of stuff is if you go to OpenAI's website, and I just put that link in the chat also, they have a link to how they think they should be using, how they think you as an instructor should be using AI in the classroom. And one of the prompts that they give as an example prompt is a prompt for a tutor, like we're discussing. So if you go to that link, OpenAI blog Teaching with AI, you can find the tutor link there. And so basically what I did was I took that their example for a tutor link, and then I adapted it to what I wanted mine to do. Here, I'll put one more link for you. So if you click on that link, no, that's the same one. Hang on. Maggie, do you have the ChatGPT link? Could you put that in the chat for me? Oh, here it is at the bottom of that slide. Could you throw that in the chat for me? Okay, so again, you can look at the directions that OpenAI gives, and then you can see this. The link down here is to a session that I created in ChatGPT 4 or ChatGPT Pro, which is running 4, and it'll show you how. Is that going to be the next slide? Yes. Okay. So this is a little bit small. So if it's too small, please click the link, and then you can hopefully control the size of it for yourself. So yeah, same thing. I guess I won't read this whole thing, but I point out some places where I adapted the OpenAI's suggested tutor a little bit. Yeah, see, I can barely read this too. Let's see. So they specified to only ask one question at a time. I really like that. So I kept that. And then what I said, so the first question I want you as the tutor to ask the student when they use you is, can you just explain the difference between commitment, the 4th level of William Perry's development stages, how it's different from the previous 3 stages. And so then you can see, hopefully in this next one, yes. So that's what it does. Now this is way too small. So please click the link in the chat. So it asks the student, I sort of role played the student here a little bit, but it says, how do you understand, part of the prompt is to be encouraging, like Maggie talked about earlier. So it tries to be encouraging, and it says, how do you understand the difference between the stages, in particular the 4th? It asks, and then I type in, I think it says anonymous. Yeah, then that's how I type in the answer, and then you can follow it through and see how it responded. And again, these are iterative. The best way to design the prompt that you want is to practice it and train it and try it a couple times and see if it responds the way you want. But you can see how it responds to the initial prompt, and how I answer the first 3 questions, and how it responds and tries to guide the student towards designing a thesis that's making sure that it incorporates the lens that we talked about at the beginning, and make sure that they're using so that they're sort of at the 4th level of Perry's stages as they design their thesis for the course. So then, like we said a little bit before, this is a best case scenario for AI. It takes a bunch of the time and burden off of the instructor. You can do a lot more exercises in class, and then you can be fairly certain that when students start turning in rough drafts, they're going to have all the pieces and parts already there that you're looking for. Then it eases the burden grade, eases the grading burden, speeds up the course, allows you to feel personally, it lets you feel like you're achieving more with the time that you have with the students, and then they're learning more than they possibly could have without the use of AI. I'll just give one more example real quick and then give back to Maggie. Again, I was teaching a criticizing television class, so I had an assignment at the beginning when I first taught it that I had to cut because I didn't have enough time to explain it correctly, with enough time to explain it to the students that I felt comfortable assigning it. And then what AI lets me do is take some of the burden back off me as the instructor, so that I have the time then to book an assignment back in. And the assignment was that students have to pitch a TV show that they want to watch that doesn't exist. So they want to see a show on Netflix about somebody like them, usually young people, because they immediately noticed that most of the shows on Netflix are about 30 people in their 30s and 40s. They want shows about people in their 18, that are 18 or early 20s. So can they design a show that has what they want to see, that has the kind of characters they want to see and watch on television? And I was thinking, and then so what I have them do is then pitch they create a PowerPoint where they describe the show like as if they were pitching it to Netflix, and then they pitch it to the class to see if they could get the class to buy the show. And now I'm like thinking and wondering about how, like, along with turning in a PowerPoint, I could ask them for the spec script for the first episode, right? I could say, figure out who you want to be in your imaginary TV show, who you want to direct it, how you would cast it, then write the script for the first episode. And then they could go to ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini, spit out a script. Is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. But then that's great, because that gives us more to talk about. But they could submit, so they can submit the show, who they want in it, who's directing it, give me a PowerPoint that they could use to pitch the show to Netflix or Tubi or somebody. And then along with a first episode spec script. That's a thing that I never could have done if I wasn't using generative AI in my classroom.
Oops. I'm not sure what happened. There we go. Okay, so as Eric has been talking about a lot of the really great uses of these tools, and that's what we mainly want you to leave with, is the kind of hopeful sense and how they can be helpful, but that doesn't mean that they're perfect, and you and your students need to be really aware of some of the problems with them. And I see these problems more as opportunities, like even more opportunities for engagement. So AI isn't good at making judgment calls. And if you don't believe me, go ask any AI system who you should vote for in this election, and it will refuse to do it. So they're not as good as understanding. I mean, granted, they've been trained specifically not to get political, so that's one problem with that. But in part because they're not able to fully understand the complexity of situations and the nuance, the sort of gray area. They want to give you a clear answer about things, and that becomes really problematic when there's not a clear answer. There are also inherent biases in these systems, so you can ask it a lot of historical questions and find that, shockingly, it privileges male voices and male thinkers. They're only as good as the prompts that you give them and on the models from which they are drawing their data, right? So rather than seeing this as just a failure and so we should avoid them, we encourage you to think about these as opportunities to challenge your students to fill the gaps. So if they have content that the AI has output, have them back it up with research, have them solicit other perspectives and voices that are not present in that model. AI also, as I'm sure you've heard this term before, has hallucinations, and that's what this image is. I went to Adobe Firefly, which is a generative AI tool, and had it create an image of a robot having a hallucination, because I just wanted to see what that would look like. And so rather than saying that AI lies or make things up, we say hallucinate, because lying means some kind of intent, like it's trying to trick you, and that's not what's happening. Rather, again, you have asked it a question, and its only job is to satisfy you. Its only job is to give you an answer. And so if there isn't one, or it doesn't have good information, reliable information, then it can simply make up a response. And so all of these things can be mitigated or helped, at least, if you make sure that you and your students are interrogating every output that you're given. As Eric said, they couldn't just use this to write a script and then copy and paste it and go with that. They would need to think critically about what's working, what's not working, what needs to be brought in to make it better. And one way to kind of inspire your students to do this, and I had Microsoft Copilot actually create this chart for me, is to help them understand what they are better at. I think that one of the kind of challenges with AI is that whenever you read an output, it feels like, it sounds like the answer, like the definitive, okay, I've asked you a question and now here it is, particularly to undergraduate students who are not familiar with the subject and don't know enough to be able to fully interrogate it. And so the more we can kind of help them see that there are these qualities, these things that they are good at, that the AI is actually worse at, the more likely they will be to engage with these tools in productive and ethical ways. So helping them see that AI really synthesizes information, right? It's predicting and interpreting, but it's not creating fresh, right? All right. And I'm going to go ahead because we are running low on time and skip to the next slide. We understand that different universities have different policies, so we're not talking about, other than this screenshot, which is pulled directly from Indiana University, from one of our websites, we're not going to touch on what your university policies may be, but we do just want to call attention to general concerns that everyone has, which is keep in mind that these tools are public tools. So anything that you're asking students to post or that you yourself are posting, you might as well be like putting it on your Facebook is the analogy I like to use. If you wouldn't post it there, then don't put it in a system. So be cognizant of, FERPA, HIPAA, like intellectual property rights. What information are you giving it? And should you be giving it that information? And the last thing that we do want to touch on here is that we get asked a lot of questions about is AI detection tools. We know that there is a lot of concern about cheating, but we really encourage you to focus on how to make sure that your students are still critically thinking, are still getting out of the course what they need, rather than making it about policing how they're using the tools, because these tools are not only very bad at doing what they say they do. They're not good at it, but also more and more studies are coming out to show that they specifically target multilingual speakers. And so rather than leaning into the sort of policing, we thought we would leave you with this last slide. So Eric?
I forgot about this one. Yeah, again, I think it feels like it's a little bit of a theme from today. We sat in on 2 other earlier AI sessions, and I hear a lot of people saying the same thing. So again, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. There are papers coming out, and again, what's happening is it's reinforcing the fact that if we stick to what we know, well, the research that already exists, active teaching, transparency, metacognition, these kinds of things will, if we use these and we think through how we want AI to function or what we want it to do in the classroom based on principles that we already know work, that's going to get us where we need to go, as opposed to like, oh, AI is something completely different we've never seen before and we don't know what to do. If we just go back to our sort of principles that we know, again, what is true, and think through how AI either supports that or impacts that, that helps us get to where we want to go.
Great. Here are a few references, and then we still have a few minutes left. So if anyone has questions, feel free to ask them in the chat.
Or you can, I haven't seen anyone raise their hand and try to join the stage yet, but if you want to, let's somebody try. And again, the chat button's hidden under the live stage thing. So on the right, there's that live stage button. You click that and that gets you to the chat. And if you want to, yeah, it's a Tuesday. It's late in the day if you're ready to go. And thank you.
Completely understand.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk. I really enjoyed your presentation.
Yes. Thanks, Kirk.
All right. Thank you both so much. I will stop recording.